That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about The Sound, the sophomore film directed by Brendan Devane, which Blue Harbor Entertainment is releasing June 27th, 2025.
Do you know Brendan Devane's first film?
No, it was something called The Canyonlands and sounds eerily similar to this film.
What is The Sound about? A group of climbers embark on a dangerous climb that has been off limits for years. What initially begins as an audacious expedition transforms into a battle for survival against a force that toys with them. What is your pull quote?
A film meant to be turned down or turned off, The Sound is nothing more than monotonous background noise when it isn't scraping its crude supernatural narrative over an unremarkable precipice, both literally and figuratively. To borrow from William Faulkner, it's the sound and the dreary.
Mine. Lacking thrills or a sensical story, The Sound may only be good for a riff tracks treatment.
It needs it.
This was surprisingly bad. I'm sorry. Because I did watch the trailer and I thought it looked fun. But it's nothing of the sort.
You are the reason that we watched this film. But good old William Fichtner maybe helped draw us in, perhaps. I don't know why he's in this film or was necessary to it. Nevertheless, he's there.
Nothing got my pressure up except being confused about the story. Mm-hmm. So what do we know? There's this rock formation called the Forbidden Wall.
Which would have been a better title.
The Forbidden Wall, yeah.
Maybe it suggests Lovecraftian dilemmas.
And in the opening, we see that in 1959, someone climbing this rock perished. We also see that maybe a secret federal agency is tied to this rock. So, of course, for 90 minutes, I'm waiting to see how so.
Not sure.
Spoiler, we never really learned. But we understand that for 60 years, this rock formation has been off limits to climbers. But for some reason, the Forbidden Wall is open. So we see this crew led by a guy named Dalton.
Colton.
Colton.
Played by Nicholas Baroudi, who looks like he walked straight off of name any soap opera set.
And he's just saying yep, we can climb it now, so we got to do it. I do not understand why it's such a big deal. Did I miss something? But they're making it seem like the cure for cancer is on top of this rock formation.
Yep, it's never been done before. There's a mission. A team is assembled. People supposedly are applying for it.
But this rock formation doesn't seem that tall or treacherous. So this ain't no cliffhanger. I'd rather watch Sly Stallone and Cliffhanger again.
Or that remake that's coming out next year.
But the crew get up there and immediately it's oh, there's something weird. There's also this guy they're calling the chief, who's an indigenous man.
But the way they're talking about him, a police chief is going to show up. And then when it's Wayne Charles, who appeared in The Canyonlands as well.
And he's being a little ominous, be careful out there. But then we're also told that he's the reason why they're allowed to climb it. So it's well, if you're so worried, why are you letting people climb? But they get up there and a few people die and it's clear that they're being possessed by some sound.
It's very how Stephen King uses indigenous peoples.
And then it becomes a race to the top. I would say the main character is this guy named Sean.
Yes, he is our protagonist, the son of Connor, played by William Fichtner, and Sean is played by Mark Hills, who
has a connection to Forbidden Wall because in 1959, was it
his grandpa?
So that man we see falling, are we supposed to believe that that's his grandfather?
Sure.
And then throughout the movie, the only thing William Fichtner has to do is call his son and say, I don't think you should do it.
Mild concern,
I don't think you should do it.
But the way Mark Hills is styled, it seems like I needed some more background. Does he have a drug problem or something that he's gotten over?
You seem bothered by it. I mean, he's a nice-looking guy.
He seemed troubled in a way that didn't seem reasonable.
Well, they certainly didn't use it to their benefit in the story. Mm-hmm. But they get to the top, they being Sean and Dalton. And they seem to be at odds because Sean seems...
Colton.
Sorry. Sean and Colton get to the top and they seem to be at odds because Sean recognizes that something's not right. At one point, he has to save some lady. And then Kristen. these people, like the women in this movie, there are 4 of them who all look the same to me. I had such a hard time telling
Might
them
even be
apart.
more. There's Kerrie and Emily and Dana and Jessie and Kristen.
There are all these white ladies with pointy features and fine straight hair. And then they wear like,
When they got the gear on
when
them,
they have the gear on.
the only one that stands out really is Kerrie, played by Jolene.
Yeah, the only one, because she's like the base camp. We need to get to all of it. But it ends with Sean and Colton getting, there's someone who watches us named Dalton.
There is.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to make use of it some kind of way.
There's also Dalton Trumbo.
They get to the top, and this is where the movie, I was leaning towards not the lowest score possible, but when we get to the top, there's this rock like up there that, now that I'm thinking about it, do you think that might have been like an alien rock?
I'm assuming.
And that's why the federal agencies up. Anyway, there's this rock up there that's glowing. And then we see these like little, the special effects are bad. I'm sorry. And then everyone starts acting weird. This Asian guy who we see at one point.
His name's Lucky. We get the backstory about his name.
Lucky's not so lucky because his ass gets up there and he's fully possessed trying to attack everyone. And then all of a sudden, these, like the spirits of 2 indigenous warriors pop up.
The chief is doing a chant over a very fake-looking fire, and then 2 fireballs, which reminded me of George C. Scott in Firestarter.
They come out and try to fight.
They pop out of these fireballs.
And then it looks like everyone's defeated except Sean and a lady. One of the ladies.
Kristen.
And then Sean says, well, we don't have any gear, but we can parachute down. So they like hold on to each other, jump off this rock, which is too high to jump off of, obviously, but it's not so high. Like, it looks so underwhelming when they jump off. The parachute saves them. And then we immediately cut back to Sean driving back to his dad's house in Vegas. And then they just greet each other like, I'm so glad you're safe. And then we get the federal agent talking, saying like, yeah, I saw what's going on. I'm waiting for the video.
He gets a phone call at his desk, yes.
And the film just ends.
Well, we see Colton wake up atop the forbidden wall and his eyes are black.
Colton's not dead, I guess, or possessed, I don't know.
It's very, the mechanism of whatever's up there is like the lo-fi version of Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull-ish.
This story just is doing way too much. It is doing way too much. Because immediately I'm thinking, why do we need the federal agency? Why can't it just have been this like land that's protected by the tribe that, you know, was there before that land was stolen from them, and they're protecting this rock formation, and so anyone who climbs up it gets dealt with.
Because this federal agency, which is it an American federal agency or Canadian?
It looks so cheap.
But it's like, couldn't they just fly a drone up there and try to snatch whatever's up there?
Right.
I don't know why they needed to open it up to these people who are...
Well, because I didn't mention at the end when Sean and Colton get up there, Colton's like, so you're the one the agency sent. So it seems like that someone is aware that there's something up here that maybe the government's trying to get.
There are multiple agencies, like Soviet spy agents. Like, I don't understand why they needed to have all these sacrificial humans along for this fake rock climb. Like, I don't understand. And then arbitrarily, the supernatural element or alien element is possessing some people, but not all of them that are hugging the rock. I don't know.
And killing off some people, but not all. So does the entity want someone to find the rock? Like, why wouldn't it just possess everyone and kill everyone?
I feel like there's an idea there that could have been teased out effectively without feeling, you know, like an exploitation film. But initially, because it's set in 59 and we get that 50s agency, I feel like this is the television series Mad Men, if it was called Sad Men, mixed with The Gorge, that recent Scott Derrickson movie.
Well, then I was thinking, oh, it's giving Gorge vibes, but no, it's not.
At first.
Well, like at first. But then, okay, so let's start with the agency, because we see the agency in 1959. It's just some like old-timey looking office with a dial-up phone, a rotary phone, and this like handsome man in a suit just saying vague things. Mm-hmm. And then in the end, in modern day, we get a man who looks very similar, dressed very similarly, in an office that looks the same. It just looks so cheap and made no sense to me.
Almost everybody in this cast is interchangeable looking. And then you have this unique looking character actor sidelined in 3 scenes.
I'm just going to start going through my notes. So in the opening, when William Fichtner calls his son to try to convince him, we get a really long scene where we don't learn anything.
Just repeated stuff like grandpa died there, you shouldn't go there, your mom doesn't want you to do it, blah, blah, blah.
But of course, Sean goes, he gets to the base, but not before he bumps into some rando guy.
Yes.
There's so much about this movie. It's almost like the script feels so thin, like they didn't have a story to work with, so they just fill it with fluff. Like,
well, you have all these characters, none of whom are characterized effectively, so it's like...
But yeah, Sean's driving, bumps into this random guy on the road who's like, oh, can I climb it with you? And Sean's like, no, can't help you.
I'm not in charge.
So he gets to the home base and he meets Colton.
Who's just a douchebag.
And then he explains that Kerrie is kind of like, or we see that Kerrie's kind of like in charge of the base.
But she didn't decide that for herself. She was assigned that, and it seems like...
Because she wants to climb.
Sexual tension with undercover agent Colton.
But then... I knew not to take this movie seriously because we get all the climbers who we don't officially meet together and understand why they're there, what skills they possess, anything.
I'm constantly going, which lady is that?
Yeah. But then we get, so they're all sitting like it's summer camp. And then there's this there's like an 11 by 17 picture of Forbidden Wall on an easel, like way too small to show to this group of people.
But it's propped up against some rocks that is very far away from Colton.
And then Colton decides to start talking about the formation, and he's just like, yeah, no.
He's only pointing in one, he's hovering in one spot, and he's like, you gotta go through these jagged lines, and the convex apron is here.
That's when I knew that, like, this is not meant to be serious. Mm-hmm. So then we learn that the chief, the indigenous man, I presume, is talking to Sean, and then he goes, oh, well, I knew your grandfather.
Yeah, he stumbles upon him by accident, it seems, in the woods. But he's like, I wanted to talk to you about your grandpa.
But then the chief goes, because Sean goes, oh, you knew my grandfather? And the chief goes, well, his story was told down like generations. But that man looks old.
Well, he was definitely...
I feel like you look like you would have been the grandfather's contemporary.
He was at least a child.
Well, yeah, not a contemporary, but you were at least a child. But he made it seem like that was 200 years ago. 1959 is only 60 years ago.
But I think that's how poorly written the script is, because that line of dialogue probably wasn't referencing the grandpa. It's referencing the presence up on top of this, running up this hill.
But the chief is telling Sean, like, there's something out there that makes you go crazy. So then Sean tries to go tell Kerrie while she's at home base with the guy who's credited as radio. Mm-hmm. And he's, I guess, the comedic relief, which makes no sense.
I don't think is it purposeful? I could never tell.
I liked the actor. Do we write down his name? Greg Greenspan?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I can't believe I remember that.
Yeah.
I liked his presence. Like, I'm sure he'd be great in something else.
He's like if you mixed Tyler Labine and Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Yeah. But I just don't think that his performance matched the tone of the movie.
Certainly not. And he's running around in the woods, even though he's not supposed to be, because the indigenous peoples are like, we only want climbers wandering around here right now.
But Kerrie and the radio guy are like trying to figure out like why the comms aren't working. Something with the comms. And Sean walks in like, I gotta talk to you. And Kerrie is like being very aggressive. Like, I'm busy, not right now. And then he kind of scurries away like a dog that's been reprimanded. And then Kerrie comes out like, I'm sorry, I'm just stressed. What's up? And Sean's like, well, I don't know how to tell you this, but like, there's something out there that makes people go crazy. That was silly as hell, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like, that makes no sense.
What, like paying taxes? Like, I don't know.
You said something that's funny because, okay, I probably should have started with, do we have any positives?
No.
I will say there are some cool soundtrack selections. They're disruptive and disjointed, but I think there are some cool songs that were selected.
Sure. You have
from people like...
You got Pearl Jam in there.
Alice in Chains.
Alice in Chains.
Yeah.
Brings you back to the 90s.
So the music was good. I don't know that it always fit. And
something called Hailstorm.
So shout out to that. And I do think there are some drone shots that are pretty cool. The problem with these drone shots is we go from these pretty cool, like wide drone shots of like actual rock formations to what is very obviously like prop rocks on a green screen.
Yes, because
and it is jarring.
All the close-ups and everything's suddenly very blurry in the background.
It's very, very jarring.
And there's dialogue, including Radio, who... It's like The Room at points, because...
I wrote that down, that it's like The Room.
Because Kerrie walks in, he's like, oh, hi. But a positive, I guess, would be...
Well, I was saying what you thought was funny. Oh, you have a positive. Sorry.
I think if you're... Besides Fichtner, there are some other notable people that pop up in cameos. There's David Clennon from... who I didn't even recognize, from John Carpenter's The Thing. Kyle Gass, who you might know from Tenacious D. And they pop up in such ridiculous ways, but why?
But what you said that was funny is sometimes because there are no medium shots. It's either like a wide drone shot or like very up close on these rocks. So it just looks so fake. But when the sound affects the climber, they seem like they have a headache. And I did also think like this, there are some shots that would make for like a good Excedrin commercial.
Yeah, he's like, bear. He's like, oh.
You have a headache?
I'm going to fall off my rock. Oh, and they have actual real notable climbers, including the most famous free solo climber in the world, Alex Honnold, shows up briefly in the beginning, who of course was the subject of the documentary Free Solo.
Okay, I think the film does a terrible job explaining like the scope of the area they're climbing, how far home base is. They're acting like they're in two different worlds and they can't get to each other, because when the comms go down and it's clear something's not right, the way it looks to the audience, I thought, can't y'all just step outside the trailer and see the wall? Like you can see that there's someone stuck.
You don't got binoculars?
I mean, I feel like you could use your iPhone and magnify it twice and you would see that there's something wrong on the wall.
Because the first victim, also a very innocuous character, who's generically handsome, Brad falls. He gets possessed and falls right away, and then they're unsure of it. It's like, you just go look outside and his body be right there.
My pull quote saying it lacks thrills. Nothing about this seemed dire. It doesn't look dire, except for the fact that also this forbidden wall doesn't look big enough that they had to spend the night trying to climb it.
Well, yeah, because they have to camp out basically in hanging tents on this side of this.
But then, I mean, there are memes, there are pictures on Instagram of like climbers who get married in like those suspended tents over big cliffs. That looks more stressful to me than the scenes in this movie.
Mm-hmm. And the time and effort and waste of energy that all of that.
Again, I have to reiterate that the balance between the like actual like rock shots, like these wide shots from drones, to these close-ups on green screen are so jarring.
It's jarring. And it made me really appreciate what that film Fall was able to do, because that's a B film and very formulaic for sure, about the two young women that get stuck at the top of that tower.
And then, so one of the ladies gets stuck because her partner dies as a result of the sound getting to her.
Tries to kill her. Yep.
Tries to kill her.
It's Kristen.
And then Sean's partner is, I think, the real rock climber, and he hurts his leg.
No,
he's not. Okay.
That's not Alex.
Well, Sean's partner hurts his leg, so he needs help getting down. And so Sean is saying, I'm going to help my partner get down, then I'm going to come back up and get the lady.
That man is helpless in every scene he's in. Because he's the backup, and he's like, Gus, I gotta go to bed. I'm not in my 20s anymore.
But the way they're acting, like, this is crazy that Sean would go up there and help her. And I didn't understand why until he actually gets up there and helps her. And then it's like, oh, because he's free soloing. Mm-hmm. But then I thought, were they just going to leave her ass up there? Or like, what were they going to do?
Well, because Colton right away, like, immediately, it's a tragedy what's happened to Brad. We must continue.
Again, we get several characters sleeping in tents that are like attached to the side of the mountain. And had this had better cinematography, it would have been tense. Mm-hmm. Like it would have looked scary, but we didn't even notice because it's so dark the way it's shot. And then because it's so close up, it just looks like they're in a tent. You never actually see the scope or the scale of how high up they are.
I just wanted some large albatross to come take a shit on.
We reviewed a shark movie like maybe within the past 6 months that had a similar problem where they never show like the vastness of the ocean and how deep it is. So it's never actually like that scary because it just looks like they're in like a kiddie pool.
Because they aren't in the ocean.
Well, right. So one of the guys who gets possessed and then falls to his death, they get his like GoPro. Mm-hmm. So Kerrie, in a really awkward scene, she throws the GoPro at the radio guy.
And destroys machinery upon doing so, it seems.
And so then he's trying to figure it out, and then he finally sees the footage and then shows it to someone else.
Demon cam.
So they're seeing like something very disturbing. And then I think it's the guy who was injured. He goes, that's some crazy stuff.
The dialogue in this?
The dialogue's terrible. And then the way the actors are responding to this entire situation is so blasé.
And Kirsten, who Sean rescues her, and then they got a camp there. And then she's like, we should just climb up the rest of the way. It's like, girl, you almost were just murdered by you saw firsthand what something, but again, I guess ultimately we learned she has a necessity to make it to the top as well. But she's stuck there with Sean, who's acting weird, and she goes, are you, you? So,
okay, the Tenacious D guy is supposed to, like in every film like this, there needs to be an expert who can help push this thing along. So radio guy has a Zoom call with Tenacious D, and he's like, yeah, I put your footage through some software and the algorithm and blah, blah, blah. Like none of it, it all sounds ridiculous.
It's got something extra on it.
And then it all amounts to him saying that this frequency has something extra on it. It got a little stank on it.
It got supersized.
So he's like, I'm going to send you some software so you can run it. It's like, you run it, man. Like, why would you want me to run it?
That element felt like in Galaxy Quest when they're using all the Star Trek nerds to help them figure out how to escape.
Yes. So then the radio guy, we see us process some of it, and then he's realizing he's playing it for Kerrie, and we realize that whatever this sound is, the frequency is basically saying come to me.
Oh, it says we hear, come to me. It felt like Ghostbusters 2.
That was pretty bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The glowing rock and these indigenous warriors popping up reminded me of, speaking of riff tracks, there's a treatment of a movie called The Dark Power from 1985.
Starring Lash LaRue.
Can I read the premise of that movie? The spirits of dead Indians are haunting a couple's house, and they call in an exorcist whose trademark is a black whip to get rid of them. I feel like The Dark Power and this movie are very much on par.
Fantastic riff tracks double feature they would make together. But it does notably feature Lash LaRue in the denouement whipping
but doing one move.
Yep, just whipping an indigenous zombie demon.
I think that movie was more fun.
Actually, well, because we had the riff tracks guys on there, but yeah.
I'm so sorry to the people who are involved. This just did not work on any level.
God, it's really hard to make a film, especially clearly there's some ambition behind this narrative, but it doesn't work. I think everything that was set out to be accomplished was a failure, unfortunately. But again, that's why I find cinema so interesting, because it's like, God, all of these really interesting people came together in moments in this film, but for naught.
What would you give the sound?
I think I was letting it hover at a 1 until the last 15 minutes, and then I'm like, oh no, 0.5.
I feel the same way. I would give this 0.5 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.